family. Hello, lovelies. Welcome to my channel. I wanted to do another video about what happened during the Dawes Commission from 1893 through 1914 with the land allotments that took place. And I mentioned to you all about this book about, earlier, I believe it was like in October, early October of 2018. If y'all did not see that video, y'all can go back and look at it. But I wanted to go further details because I got a chance to read some of the things that took place during the land allotments of the 5 civilized tribes. I also did a series of videos about how there was the Racial Reclassification Act. While there was when they was racially reclassifying people, primarily especially the American Aborigines, with the aka African Americans, they were also establishing Dawes Commission and changing the rights of or stealing the rights of the indigenous Aborigines, and allowing gray Caucasoids, Caucasians, the settlers, to take over their land. And it's always been a blur and a mystery to me as to how that took place. But this book here brought a lot of clarity, and also a lot of the research I've been doing, reading other sources and doing my own research and reading scholarly journal articles, reading encyclopedias, books, old books that was written during that time period and prior. You get a chance to get a good picture of exactly what took place, because a lot of this is not going to be taught in the history books, especially when you're in an indoctrinated society that's based on gray supremacy. You're not going to hear the facts. But we're going to read together. I would recommend this book for your family. And this is excellent read to have to show more proof and evidence of what actually took place and the blatant hijacking and stealing of the indigenous people's lands. It wasn't, these are our people, and we failed to realize that. But I'm strolling down. These are the table of contents. But this is the preface. I'm not going to go into that. I want to go into the first chapter right here. It says chapter 1. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm going to just read a few paragraphs so you can get a gist of what this book is going. It's going to explain and bring more insight as to what actually happened. And the author of this book, I believe he's a historian. He's very credible in his research and was very extensive in his research. So, an excellent read. And it says here, what can you do when you discover a continent, but there were already people there? And it says here, but there was already people there. It says here, European settlers arriving in North America had to contend with what they soon called the Indian problem. They tried to numbers of approaches that generally depended on relative military power of the natives and the non-natives. But by the late 1870s, most of the original inhabitants who still maintained connection with the original tribe had been pushed onto reservation areas that were considered undesirable out of the way, the hope that the groups would be isolated and perhaps eventually civilized. However, critics of this approach argue strongly that assimilating the Indians into general population was a better policy. Okay, so I guess they figured, in other words, they were marginalizing the Indians, the American Aborigines, and also I believe the natives, if they were over here. when I've been doing some research, I feel like, this is my opinion, that the original Indians, the American Aborigines, were these civilized tribes. And when I've been doing my research and reading through different sources, scholarly sources, and a lot of the encyclopedias and the writings from that time period, I've been noticing that a lot of the original Indians, especially during the 1700s, 16, 1700s, the Indians were running away from other tribes because they were being kidnapped and thrown into slavery. So if that was the case, and most of the people that were enslaved during colonization, they were dark complexion people. They were dark skinned. And they are us. Since it's been proven that already the theory of the bunk has been debunked about the transatlantic slave trade, there's no support, very little supportive evidence that shows that they brought millions of people in a short time period. They had the technology to bring over millions of people from Africa to populate this continent, especially the United States. So it's been proven that here in the United States, they didn't bring that many Africans. So where did the Indians come from? They were here. We were here already. And since we were here already, we know that these are our people. And they brainwashed it in such a way. They try to say, pretty much they say reservations. And they marginalized these people. But they failed to also realize that they also enslaved the original people. And and people get stuck with the term slave. But when you look at it, with all these wars that was taking place and the kidnappings of the children, the women and children, and all they were doing, these people were prisoners of wars. And then when the queen, European queen, decided to make it perpetual servitude for those who don't accept their indoctrination, then these people are the people who are considered slaves. So what they did was, when they captured the people, they put them in slavery, but in actuality, they were prisoners of war, because there was a lot of wars that were going on, hundreds of wars, several. And the people fought back. Our people fought back. And the ones that fought back were the ones that were thrown into slavery. And they became prisoners of war. And they signed off an agreement to make these people become prisoners, become perpetual servitude, which is slavery. So it's one and the same. And the great washing here is that they did not include that. So a lot of these Indians were enslaved. So these Negroes that they call Negroes, which are us, they try to say that they were also slaves, slaves and Negroes, as a way to try to throw you off. But they were the original tribe. That's what happened. But let's continue. It says it's become an article of faith among self-proclaimed friends of Indians of private ownership of property was the most powerful tools that would be used to bring about assimilation. They determined to pressure the federal government to adopting policies that would destroy the tribal government based on communal ownership of land and give each Indian his or her own piece of real estate. See? So they handpicked who they want to have property, and the ones they didn't. But probably, and they were using colorism, and that's how they did it. Colorism, and bringing this animosity between the lighter complexion Indians and the darker complexion Indians. And it says convincing the federal government to adopt a policy of allotment of land became an obsession of the later 19th century Christian reformers because they were convinced that would be forced the Indians to become just like the industrials. White farmers, they were rolling over like a tidal wave. And see, that's what they did. They flooded themselves into this country. When they these wars and kidnapping people and throwing them into slavery, and it was a very unfair war. It was not equal because if one side of the enemy has a ton of guns and the other side don't have nearly as much of the same technology and it's less advanced, of course it's you're going to win. Then you bring over your germs, the germ warfare with your diseases, with smallpox, and purposely giving it to the people. It's just evident you're going to win on an unfair scale. But anyway, it says they flooded here into the Americas on the East Coast. And it says the more ethnocentric reformers had no qualms with destroying what they saw as an inferior culture in order to save the Indians. That's sad. They think the Aboriginal culture was inferior, but why? What gets me is if it's so inferior, then why are you trying to appropriate it? Why are you trying to take on and take? See, this is what I'm talking about. The cultural appropriation. Now that's all you see is great caucasoids up there prancing around talking about they're the Indians. I'm going, you trying to be something that you're not. You weren't even indigenous here. You were invaders. They came over here and stole the land. That's all you are. You'll never be an original person. And and this group of people who came over here, I just never understood why they can't accept the fact that they're not indigenous here. If their culture is so inferior, then why do you try to steal it? They still do it to this very day. And with the music and all the clothes, the hair, everything that we do, they come around and try to steal it and then make money off of it. So they don't have no kind of respect. And then they try to wash it and put it as themselves. It's ridiculous. But anyway, it says, thus, one study concludes the allotment policy appeals simultaneously to humanitarian instincts over self-interest. Yeah, right. See, they trying to say, oh, we're being nice. We're going to let them have their own land and own their own businesses and everything. But then, yeah, and then they're going to have a problem with that, though. You see what happened with Black Wall Street. And it says here, Congress eventually persuaded by a combined force of good intentions of the best greed to pass the General Allotment Act, which was signed into law on February 8th. Okay? So they did that, the General Allotment Act. Okay, so that's when they started that process. And what was interesting is when I went to research, I did the reclassification of the American Aborigines, which was erased and brainwashed there from this Harvard University research. She tried to make it, only include Hispanics and Mongoloids, pretty much every other ethnic group besides the American Aborigines. That's how they do it. In modern time, I see the gray washing with the pen, so they can try to keep this narrative going and then flood the media with these false lies without excluding us and what we have to say, which is fine. Well, no, it's not fine. It's just that we have to create our own. And then they come in and try to put themselves and take away that what we create so they can put themselves there. So they can continue the thing. That's why it's important that we keep them out. Stop selling out. I did a video about that. Too many sellouts. You build something, you keep it in-house for generation, creating a legacy. And I think part of it is the lack of identity, not knowing who we are, not reconnecting. And see, that's why we need our culture back and keep it and hold it sacred to ourselves. because this is how they did it. It's by stripping us of our identity. That's why we need to bring back identity and hold it sacred. The Asians do that all the time with their ancient knowledge and beliefs, and they don't let outsiders just come in and just take over. And then we need to value ourselves and do the same. And no, you're not going to come up in here. This is ours. And that's why I said it's a lot. We got a lot of work to do, y'all. I think we're just now starting to open our eyes and see what happened. But we have a lot to do, But let's scroll down. It says here, the Cherokee, Choctaws, Chickasaws, Creeks, and Seminoles were exempt from this original legislation because Congress did not want to address the tangible or legal questions that would be raised by the change in ties to their land. These tribes were collectively known about the universally as the 5 civilized tribes. See, and I find it funny, civilized, probably the ones that were that sort of got burnt out and couldn't fight back because they kidnapped most of the people and threw them in slavery, or captured them during the wars and put them in slavery. Prisoners of war. That's what actually took place. And they and then some of the few that was misbreeds, which I said, those half breeds that you see. And once you start mixing them with the enemy, then they miss you so much, then they claim that they still Indian when it's 10, 12 generations later, and they great Caucasoids, they have very little trace of indigenous roots. So they should not be in those tribes, and never should have been in there in the first place. They're not full-blooded. Well, while the descendants of the full-bloodeds are excluded and marginalized and never get their land rights. And this is how they did it, pretty much. And it says, known universally as the civilized tribes, let's draw it down, because many of them had adopted many of the elements of the gray culture that reforms often pointed to them as models for the assimilation that could be accomplished. And see, this is what the grays, they claim they accepted. Nobody accepted it. They forced it. And they passed more laws such as Jim Crow to even force it down the American Aborigines' throat, pretty much. Because this was not accepted. It's never been accepted. Okay? It was forced. And it says, with the exception of Creek and Seminoles, there have been some great deal of intermarriage with Grays. And see, that's what I'm telling you all, this intermarriage with Grays. That's what they did. And then they bring these half-breeds up in there. And that's why you got half-breeds mostly, and mostly Great Caucasoids over these tribes. They did that so they could put themselves in these tribes so they can take over and hijack it. Pretty much. And then what they did was they opened the floodgates once you had the half-breeds, and then the mostly very little, and the Great Caucasoids in there, because some of them, I don't think they even half-breeds. I think they just threw themselves in there. And then open up the door to let a floodgate come open for even more grays to come in and ransack everything. They're thieves. They're viruses. And exactly what they did. And that's why the land don't look as pretty as it used to, because they came in here, hijacked the land, poisoned the waters, spraying poisons in the air, destroying everything, chopping down trees, and don't have no discretion. It's constant cutting down trees. And they don't have no kind of respect for nature. And it's quite evident. You see it today. And then with us losing our identity, we so lost, we don't even respect. It's hard to respect anything or see what's going on, because we so, been oppressed for so long. They lost the hope. That's why it's time for us to open up and wake up and see that we do have the power to change things if we believe. But it says here that It says tribalese mixed bloods were regarded by the proponent of allotment as an enlightenment because they were receptive to the goals of the policy. And just like colorism, which I say, I bet you they had colorism going on up in there. And also, the only people who could run these tribes, like I said in another video, looking at the pictures and everything, they put other gray Caucasoids, because I doubt that some of these people that are over these tribes are even have any Indian blood in it. I think they just put themselves in there, and a lot of them, after they won the World War. And it says the 5 civilized tribes were so widely received as different from other tribes, and eventually questioned. And then it says right here, was perceived as different from other tribes that some would eventually question whether their members should even be considered real Indians. See? And these members could have been the freedmen's in particular, because those are pretty much the 100% Indians. And I'm pretty sure the slaves were Indians too. They were nothing but prisoners of war. And I believe the tribes held on to these slaves because a lot of them were family members. Family members. They didn't. They kept them in slavery because they didn't want them going somewhere else. To some of these graves as slaves. They probably did that so they can keep their family members close among family ties. That's a theory of mine. I'm not sure, but that's what I think happened. That's exactly what I think took place. But then, I'm gonna put a link to this review of this book. It's an excellent read. Let me see here. It's definitely an excellent read. I wanted to go into further details. This is my blog, you guys. I had did this a while back in October, and I wanted to also go into more detail about this one as well, because I wanted to share with you all some pages within the book that tells you exactly what happened, and it took place in I believe it was chapter 7 of the book. I was looking at this because it talks about Cherokee, and it tells you exactly what happened, detail by detail. And it just shows you how they pretty much hijacked the land. And explains everything, supportive evidence, supportive paperwork, and everything. Y'all need to really get this book. It even has the permit, the certificate for admission of the Cherokee civilization. It just shows how they orchestrate the whole thing. And so what I'm seeing is this picture here is a picture of the Cherokee Indians. It's off from a distance. It's like they didn't want to show the Negro Indians being there for the land allotments, because that's evidence that they were supposed to give that land to those folks, and they just didn't. They blatantly hijacked it and allowed the graves. And the graves that are here now, a lot of them are new. They are new arrivals. They only got here in the early 1900s, most of them. And so they haven't really been here very long. And they definitely not, but yet a lot of them still want to claim indigenous heritage when it don't belong to them, and claim that they were here first. So, yeah. And that, like I say, y'all can probably, let me see if I can blow it up. Yeah, here's the picture right here, so y'all can get a closer look. But I'm gonna go over chapter 7 in another video because I don't want to make the video too long. I can do another part to it. Because this video, I just wanted to introduce how the first part of the book, let y'all get a feel of it, and how it just explains and gives you how they were getting organized and how they planned the whole takeover and hijacking of the indigenous lands and here in the Americas, with the 5 civilized tribes in particular. And so I think in the next video, I'm going to probably go more into details I'm gonna start with Cherokee because I think Cherokee is the one I'm sort of interested in because it's my indigenous rap. But I may do all of them, if I have a chance, to touch on it. But mainly the Cherokee Indians is the one that I'm gonna share with you guys, since it's the largest, and talk about how process step by step how they actually came in and did this. And I think that's important. It's like when you learn your history, you can learn some of those mistakes that our ancestors made and see what we can do to make it better and not to make the same mistakes and make things right. But I think it's important to know what actually happened, what actually took place, and breaking it down and do a thorough analysis of ourselves so we can see how we can make things right. Some of us are starting to open our eyes. And so the more we learn, the more we educate ourselves and our future generation, the better it is, I believe. So, yes, you guys, that's pretty much what I want to share with you all in this video. We're going to probably do a part 2 to this one as well. But I would love to hear what you all think about Dawes Commission. Do you think that Dawes Commission is part of the reason? Do you believe that Dawes Commission, the allotments of the 5 Civilized tribes, tie in with the racial reclassifications act that was passed during that time period? Do you think it was correlation? It was widely orchestrated? But to me, that's how I feel. I think that's what took place. They did both simultaneously around the same time period. Do you think, so what do you think happened with Dawes Commission? Do you think it also affect other tribes throughout the Americas? And, or do you think it only affect these tribes? And, yeah, please leave your comments below. I look forward to hearing from you guys. Please like this video and don't forget to hit the subscription and subscribe to this channel. No, don't forget to hit that bell. And coming soon is the chakra necklace. Keep you guys posted. And till next time, love and peace, family. Bye-bye.